We don't call plumbers just because a wrench is hard to use. We call them because they've mastered how to use that wrench to solve all manner of problems, and they've learned how to recognize the essential elements of each specific problem. Now, Bob Dylan and I both play the banjo, but even if we pluck the same notes, I think you'd recognize that you'd be missing the magic if you weren't listening to Bob. He and any great musician bring a certain order and magic to what they do, no different than what a plumber does when he walks in and can unravel the most complex issues in your house. So whatever the tools are, it's still workers that are using them and creating the magic. And their skills, their training is what's going to make the difference. And that's why we've got to find smart workforce development opportunities around AI that are inclusive, that lift up the skills of all our workers to make sure that everyone thrives. Everyone has the opportunity to create their own better future, their own career. Today's hearing is going to provide an opportunity for us to hear from some terrific experts who've been considering AI implementation in a variety of contexts and have direct experience of how these efforts to train and upskill our workers are succeeding and some of the challenges we face. Our goal today is to walk away with a better understanding of what AI integration looks like in workplaces around different industries, the role of both public and private sector leaders in fostering AI literacy and making sure that the training of the workforce of tomorrow continues unimpeded. What more needs to be done at a federal level to make sure we all get it right. I think this subcommittee is uniquely positioned to help identify how employers and workers can best understand and maybe more importantly, leverage the AI tools that are at our disposal. After all, I think every member in this room wants to make sure that AI technology remains a treat, not a trick. Before I introduce our panel of witnesses, I'd also like to ask for unanimous consent to enter 2 letters into the record, one from IBM and one from the National Security Council. No objections? Without objection, with that, I'd like to welcome each of our witnesses who are joining us today. Tyrance Billingsley is the founder and executive director for Black Tech Street, based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There he is leading the initiative's community-based approach to tech innovation and the economic development that leads to. Feet on the ground, real-life experiences. Josh Lannon is the Vice President of Productivity Technologies at Workday from my home state of Colorado. There he leads Workforce's team through production of tech products, including AI technology systems. Workday's been a leader in adapting AI literally from before people were even talking about AI. Mary Kate Morley Ryan serves as the Managing Director of Talent and Organization at Accenture, one of the leaders in the country in terms of facilitating the acquisition of the skills necessary to deal successfully with AI. At Accenture, she's focused on researching workforce transformation and inclusion in the future of work. Now I'll recognize Ranking Member Braun to make his opening remarks and then to introduce our final witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of you for being here, and look forward to introducing you in a moment. Senator Hickenlooper and I come from a unique background, unusual for most individuals in the U.S. Senate. We actually spent a lot of time in the real world before we got here. We ran businesses. We were entrepreneurs by trade. And I look at the 37 years that I spent with a little business. I mean, it was so hard scrabble. It was 17 years with 15 employees. But when I knew I had a tiger by the tail, that's when I had to start confronting technology. and the always extreme cost of it. And I'm talking about dollars spent to get the latest and greatest. Because in year 17, we were on Radio Shack. I can tell you now that we employ a lot of custom coders. That little business grew from a regional one, then a national one, with locations in most states. You learn a lot there. I learned to generally always say to my chief technology officer, which is my older son, my younger son runs the business as the CEO and CFO. We just quit saying no to that latest and greatest technology because we've leveraged it so well to differentiate ourselves from the competition. So we're looking at AI. Would you do the same? Well, being an entrepreneur, when I watch to see whatever's hitting the market across the spectrum of our economy, and I've heard it forewarned by the people that put it out there more than anything I've ever observed in my time of being someone looking for that leading edge, what's that next best way to do something. So it brings us to an interesting crossroads with something that looks like it can do so much, that can be so beneficial, but also looks like the malfeasance that could come from it, forewarned by the people that know the most about it, it should give you pause. I'm very concerned that we don't smother it. I think that we could do that easily. Generally, we over-regulate here. We get bureaucrats and folks that don't know how to get from here to there in the real world making all the rules. So we got to be careful about that. What we see it can do and what we are being warned about that it may be used for the wrong purpose, to me, is the essence of the journey that we're on. All I can tell you is we're a lot more productive now in my own business now that we've got the greatest and latest technology. I remember back when we were doing orders by hand on a Radio Shack system. That is why I think in weighing how we get through this, we've got to err on the side of letting it breathe, letting it show what it can do, but also take into consideration what the people that know the most about it are giving us as a admonition to be careful with it. So I think that's where we are today, and as we apply it to how we can use it in the workforce, our economy grows by how much productivity we can leverage on the people that are in it itself. And over time, we've always come into confrontations to where we are worried about what it's going to do to the economy because it will displace jobs. This is a little different because it can get into areas of creativity. You already see things like patent trolling. You see things that are trying to rob people of their what they've created in other arenas in our economy. So I think there's a lot there to be worried about. I do believe that hearings like this, and they're going to have many more in the Congress, are key to putting some type of framework of common sense regulation around it, keeping full in mind that we don't want to smother something that could be so beneficial to all of us. I'll yield back.
Thank you, Senator Braun, and Ranking Member. I appreciate that perspective, and it is unusual in the Senate to have a chair and a co-chair that are both entrepreneurs. There are not as many entrepreneurs in our Congress as there used to be, for whatever reason.
Need to be more, don't you think?
Well, that's a bias we shouldn't be ashamed of. All right, now for our opening remarks. I'll go from order from left to right.
Introduce the next witness. Are you going to do that?
Oh,
later?
yes, I'm sorry. No,
Okay.
no, you do it now.
Yeah. My pleasure to introduce Bradford Newman. Mr. Newman is a litigation partner resident in Baker McKenzie's Palo Alto office and chair of the North American Trade Secrets practice. Mr. Newman routinely advises and represents the world's leading technology, banking, professional service, manufacturing, and commerce companies in connection with their most significant data protection and trade secret matters. That's a lot. Among other subjects, Mr. Newman specializes in matters related to AI. He is the chair of the AI subcommittee of the American Bar Association and has been instrumental in proposing federal AI workforce legislation as well as developing AI oversight and corporate governance best practices designed to ensure algorithmic fairness. Mr. Newman was also recognized as one of the top 20 AI attorneys in California in 2019. We welcome his expertise to the conversation today.
Welcome to you all. Appreciate that. I apologize, Mr. Newman, for slipping, moving to, I hit fast forward accidentally. So we'll start with Mr. Billingsley to give your opening remarks and then go down the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm appreciative to the Subcommittee on Employment and Workplace Safety for this opportunity to testify here. My name is Tyrance Billingsley II, and I'm the founder and executive director of Black Tech Street, an initiative to rebirth historic Black Wall Street as a Black innovation economy and catalyze a movement that sees Black Americans embrace technology as a wealth-building and global impact mechanism. Black Tech Street was founded when I asked myself the question, what could Black Wall Street have been had it been supported and not destroyed? When I thought about the level of tenacity that it took for these Black entrepreneurs to build successful businesses during Jim Crow in my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma, I immediately saw parallels with the tech industry, and not long after, I came to a three-pronged epiphany. One, tech is one of the only industries in which intergenerational wealth is generated in 7 to 10 years via successful company exit. Two, tech is the core medium through which all global innovation takes place. And three, by the year 2030, there were projected to be as many as 4.3 million vacant, high-paying tech jobs due to a tech talent shortage. After considering these three things, I not only saw an incredible wealth-building opportunity for Black Americans, but I also saw the Black Wall Street vision pushed to a new horizon. I surmised that if had Black Wall Street been supported and not destroyed, it would have been nothing other than the nation's premier Black innovation economy. Focusing on the three verticals of cybersecurity, business intelligence, data analytics, and responsible artificial intelligence, Black Tech Street was founded on the premise that technology presents unparalleled economic opportunity. The key word here is responsible AI. And back in Oklahoma, we are taking a community-first approach and not just relying on big tech to address how AI can be a responsible tool for the benefit of communities and entrepreneurs. To that end, our organization has brokered a holistic alliance with Microsoft to support the creation of 1,000 Black cyber and cyber-adjacent professionals in Tulsa by the year 2030. We facilitated the participation of over 70 Black Tulsans in the largest public AI red teaming exercise alongside Seed AI at DEF CON 31. And we co-led the Tulsa Hub for Equitable and Trustworthy Autonomy Consortium that recently received a U.S. Economic Development Agency Regional Tech Hubs designation alongside Tulsa Innovation Labs and the George Kaiser Family Foundation. While we believe that all of our work is critical, the conversation around AI is on an entirely different level of urgency and importance. Artificial intelligence will not just disrupt lives, it will remake the world. Perhaps most urgently, AI will fundamentally transform the workforce, which is the lifeblood of any well-functioning society and economy. In truth, the workforce will be the first area where we truly see the power, the transformative power of AI at scale, whether this be in the innovation economy, the creative economy, or one of the many other facets. Whether or not we ensure AI secures a beneficial arrangement for people in the future of work will set a precedent for how AI is administered in all facets of life. If the systems for AI in the workforce are designed in a human-centered way, AI could be a tool to fundamentally alter the socioeconomic position of marginalized communities in this country, or it could exacerbate pre-existing inequities in a way that are almost irreparable. To that end, I believe there are 4 critical guidelines that can help us ensure that the future of work built by AI is safe, equitable, and beneficial for the American worker and economy. 1, approach the regulation of AI and the issues that surround it in the workforce, and more broadly, as a socio-technical issue. Complex or wicked socio-technical issues are problems that resist solution despite repeated attempts, are difficult to describe or predict, are not addressable by single individuals or organizations, are not addressable in a single intervention and require multiple coordinated interventions, and the most critical question in them is discerning where to focus, followed by what to do, when, and how. 2, develop a worker-centered AI social contract for the workforce that defines the rules of use and engagement as they relate to AI for both employees and employers, is rooted in framing and incentivizing AI as a co-pilot to enhance human creativity, productivity, and output, sets the precedent for policies and systems that define how AI can and should be used in relation to workers as the most critical aspect of the future of work instead of just what the technology can do, and finally displays a stable framework for using AI to unleash human potential in a way that also leads to better profit and performance for companies. 3, over-index and incentivize training and education programs that target people of color and communities that have been historically left out of the technological revolution. 4, develop the framework for AI and the future of work in a way that strengthens the intersection between workforce and high growth as well as small business entrepreneurship. I believe that these 4 guiding principles and the inclusion of communities like Tulsa in these conversations will be the keys to ensuring that we utilize AI to build a future of work that unleashes the true potential of the labor force and powers the American economy of the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lanner?
Good morning, Chair Hickenlooper, Ranking Member Braun, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Josh Lannon. I'm Vice President of Productivity Technology at Workday. Workday is a leading provider of cloud applications for finance and human resources. Our software is used by more than 10,000 organizations, including half of the Fortune 500, servicing over 65 million users. In April of this year, nearly 1 in 4 of all U.S. job openings were processed on the Workday platform, a responsibility we take very seriously. At the same time, our business gives us a unique vantage point and opportunity to shape the future of work. For more than 25 years, I've led teams of developers, product managers, and researchers that build software which has transformed how teams run their business. AI clearly holds great potential in this area, which is why I commend the subcommittee for its timely bipartisan focus on how AI will impact the American workforce. It's clear that advancing technology will change the skills the workforce of the future requires. As a father of 2 teenage daughters, it's an incredibly challenging time to give them career advice. At the same time, when I see how new technologies are helping them in ways in their schooling I couldn't have imagined when I was in school. At Workday, we believe that AI can enable U.S. workers and employers to better navigate future changes by focusing on a skills-based approach to talent. Today, an employee can use Workday's AI to identify opportunities for career development. For example, employees can ask Workday specific questions about their company's learning and development policies and get a clear answer without having to read page after page of documentation, all thanks to AI. As our Workday product teams integrate AI, we strive to put people at the center and enable them to apply their judgment. This requires careful crafting of the Workday product experience, so users understand always how and when AI is augmenting their work. It is also why Workday provides tools that enrich but don't replace human judgment. It's an approach that builds trust with our customers and our users. Recently, Workday surveyed 1,000 senior business leaders about AI and learned there's overwhelming agreement that AI is needed to help their employees work more efficiently and make better decisions. Yet leaders also told us their people lack the skills to adapt to the coming changes in the workplace. How do we address this skills gap while also equipping workers and employers to navigate the coming changes? It's a significant challenge to identify and invest in skills that are relevant today while recognizing those skills will change in the future. In Workday's view, a skills-based approach to talent, an approach that emphasizes what a person can do or learn rather than their credentials, is the best way forward. The governors of 10 states are embracing such an approach because it provides for more nimble reskilling and expands applicant pools. We're pleased to see the President's new AI executive order acknowledge the importance of skills in a changing workplace. And I've seen firsthand in my organization how shifting to a skills-based approach has impacted our organization. Faster hiring and the opportunity to bring on qualified candidates we might have overlooked in the past. To make a shift to a skills-based approach, you need both the right mindset and technology. Workday Skills Cloud, for example, uses AI to align skills to a common vocabulary and map how different skills relate to each other. With that in place, our customers provide online talent marketplaces for their employees to find new internal opportunities to get the skills they need. For example, a retail associate who's interested in a management position can discover a leadership role at another store and take suggested online learning classes to give them the skills they need to apply for that opportunity. In other words, AI can take the guesswork out of workforce development and elevate people's skills. Finally, I'd like to mention that Workday believes there are steps the subcommittee can take to support the transition to a data-driven, skills-based approach to talent at a national scale. There's growing awareness, including with the National AI Advisory Committee, about the need to modernize the Department of Labor's workforce and labor market information reporting. High-quality and timely federal data is essential to be able to leverage AI and to provide workers and employers with actionable insights on what skills are needed. Workday has partnered with industry stakeholders to craft model legislation that Congress can take to support these efforts. In conclusion, while AI will continue to drive change, we at Workday are all in on its ability to unlock human potential and support a skills-based approach to talent. We seek to play a constructive role in AI with workforce issues and practices. We hope the subcommittee will see us as a resource as you consider a path forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lannon. Ms. Morley Ryan.
Chairman Hickenlooper and Ranking Member Senator Braun and members of the subcommittee. It is my pleasure to speak to you this morning on behalf of Accenture. My name is Mary Kate Morley Ryan. I focus on technology and workforce transformation, social innovation, and inclusion in the future of work. Accenture is a global professional services organization that helps the world's leading businesses, governments, and other organizations build their digital core, transform their operations, and accelerate their growth. We have approximately 733,000 people serving clients in more than 120 countries. We are the largest independent technology services firm globally and the top partner of most leading technology and AI companies. Our unique position in the market allows us to identify cross-cutting trends and concerns in the use of AI and generative AI, including how they will affect the future of work and business. We recently issued a report with the World Economic Forum that provides a structured analysis of the potential impacts of the integration of large language models on jobs. Our research analyzed over 19,000 individual tasks across 867 occupations, assessing the potential exposure of each task to large language model adoption. We were able to identify occupations with a greater proportion of time spent in tasks with the potential for automation, including credit authorizers, telemarketers, and others. We also identified occupations that are more likely to be augmentable, those that will be unaffected, and a number of new roles that will be created, such as AI developers, data curators, and AI content creators. AI will transform the way we work. We estimate that 40% of all working hours across industries will be impacted by large language models, like the ones driving the generative AI applications such as ChatGPT. That does not mean that generative AI will replace 40% of all working hours. On the contrary, jobs will not be done either by humans or by robots, but by humans enhanced by AI. As AI transforms the workplace, in addition to aligning on responsible AI frameworks and governance, organizations will need to consider its workforce impact in 3 key ways. First, how AI will impact existing jobs. Second, how can we develop a pipeline of talent to create the AI-powered technologies of the future? And third, what kind of skilling needs it will create? The reality is we don't currently have the workforce we need to fill the jobs of the future. That's why we advise our clients to establish a skills foundation tailored to their organization, to deconstruct the work to support human and machine collaboration, and re-architect strategic and operational talent practices. At Accenture, we put this advice into practice. We recently announced a $3 billion investment that will double our data and AI practice from 40,000 to 80,000 people over the next 3 years through a combination of acquisitions, new hires, and retraining our current workforce. Additionally, we view skilling and apprenticeship programs as critical to our success and adaptability. That's why we invest $1 billion a year in upskilling our own people and invest heavily in structured earn and learn apprenticeships. We've also put our skill-based hiring commitment into action by opening nearly half of our entry-level positions to people who do not have a 4-year college degree. The workforce commitments and programs we drive internally are echoed in the way that we serve our clients. Client conversations around the workforce, including skills-based practices, responsible AI, technology and AI fluency, are happening every day, if not every minute of every day. All too often, AI and the workforce debate turns into a binary one with the machine, will machines take our jobs? But the answer is not binary. AI can help us do our jobs better if deployed effectively and responsibly. We believe the focus must be on evolving how we work and unleashing the potential of people as much as we're focusing on the technology. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning and look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morley-Ryan. Mr. Newman.
Chairman Hickenlooper, Ranking Member Braun, and the honorable members of the Employment and Workplace Subcommittee, my name is Brad Newman. I'm a partner with the law firm of Baker McKenzie, where I'm a leader of their AI practice. I serve as the chair, or have served as the chair and now co-chair of the AI Subcommittee of the American Bar Association. Today, I'm here as a concerned citizen and a parent. For many years, I have had the privilege to represent the world's leading developers of AI and to get a behind-the-scenes look at the technology, including the incredible promise it presents to improve so many of our lives, and in particular the workforce, as well as the very serious social downside. I have published extensively on the need for legislative safeguards on the use of AI. I've spoken with the world's leading data scientists and ethicists, as well as the EEOC, and I am familiar with all sides of the AI regulatory debate. I passionately believe that AI in the employment context is one area where the federal government should act cautiously, prudently, and once fully informed on a bipartisan basis to enact legislation designed to promote innovation and protect the health, welfare, and safety of society. My long-held belief is that the existing laws do not adequately provide for the potentially harmful downside of AI in the employment context. Without additional funding and training, existing agencies are not fully prepared to oversee and regulate this complex technology. In 2015, I published an article in TechCrunch entitled, "The Artificial Intelligence Poses a Greater Risk to IP Than Humans Do." In 2018, I published a follow-up piece entitled, "Society Needs the Artificial Intelligence Data Protection Act Now." In these articles, I proposed a comprehensive federal AI legislative framework, including addressing AI's impact on the workforce. My articles and demands for regulation piqued the interest of the House of Representatives, affording me the great privilege of working on a draft bill of the AI Data Protection Act. I urge this committee to conclude, as I have, that we need new AI legislation. Because of the significant civil rights implication of workplace technologies, AI legislation in the employment context is a prudent place to begin this journey. Eventual federal legislation should not regulate AI technology generally, but rather delineate specific prohibited use cases and guardrails. Future legislation must not create overly burdensome compliance obligations. It should not create rules and regulations that are so onerous that only the very largest developers and users of this technology can afford to comply, thus creating a de facto monopoly for the largest industry players. A rational, risk-based approach would ensure that all AI developers have the resources to comply and participate in the opportunities presented by the AI workforce ecosystem. The developers of this technology want to do the right thing and are eager to work with a bipartisan group of federal legislators to get this right. Carefully regulating the use of AI in the employment context is as important as regulating the securities markets, for which we have the SEC, our food and drug safety, for which we have the FDA, and so forth. However, just as the federal government does not regulate against securities and new drugs per se, so should the federal government narrow its regulation of AI to known risk factors rather than the technology as a whole. No existing law adequately protects the workforce from the potential downside risks of AI employment tools while ensuring that they promote innovation. Developers and users of this technology face an increasing patchwork of state and local legislation, which creates onerous, vague, and expensive compliance obligations depending on the jurisdiction. Regulations like those enacted in New York City, for instance, come with convoluted and unclear rules that will likely prove too expensive for many segments of the user community to comply with, thus incentivizing them to abandon the benefits of AI tools in this use case. The New York City law codifies a misguided one-size-fits-all approach to AI regulation that prioritizes limiting the technology rather than minimizing or eliminating risk factors the technology poses. That is not a desirable outcome. Companies that develop AI and deploy AI technology in the workforce and the workforce itself deserve a rational solution that delivers clarity and consistency on a national level. The guardrails should be plainly spelled out in bipartisan federal legislation. Again, Chair Hickenlooper, Ranking Member Braun, and the members of the subcommittee, it's truly an honor to share my perspective on these important issues, and I welcome the opportunity to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. And I feel comfortable saying I've been to a lot of Senate hearings, although I am a first-termer. So that limits how sweeping this statement might sound, but I don't think I can remember being on a panel where I have any one of you I could spend an entire day with and want to hear, A, how you grew up, how you ever got to this position in your life, and you all are representing essential, important, key factors as we make this incredible transition. So I already am recognizing that we're not going to have enough time, so I'm going to just warn the witnesses that they will be badgered at some time in the future for additional questions, I am sure. Let me start around Workday. Obviously, creating many of the AI tools that across America that America is using. Mr. Lannon, in your testimony, you noted that Workday really strives and makes every effort to develop products that are going to enrich and not automate human decisions. So in your view, how should employers work with employees as they think about different types of automated decision-making? Well, let's start with that.
Thank you, Senator. It starts with that point of view that, as we say, puts the person at the center of the experience. And so when we think about developing an experience, we think first about the employee and how they're using AI. And we have several principles I want to kind of unpack in terms of like how we apply that principle in our product experience. When you're using a product of AI in an area where you are applying judgment for something that's important, bringing someone on board into your organization, promoting them, it needs to be very clear to the user that they're engaging with AI. And that is very critical. Secondly, they need to know how they're passing data into the AI to make a decision. What's the basis for the information that's coming back from that AI system that they're evaluating and looking at? And we've learned from talking to employees and sort of looking at how they use our products that if they have those two things in place, they have a better sense of what's happening and they can then apply their judgment to any resulting decisions or content that's being created for them to apply that into their work environment. And that's what gives them the confidence in using the AI systems. It's also what gives the employers the confidence in using the AI systems. So from the perspective of the employers, they want to know what types of AI is powering the systems. They want to know that we've evaluated those risks. They want to know that we've really continued to invest in understanding when AI is used. And we treat AI as something that customers can opt into, not opt out of. Now, it is the case that over 80% of our customers at Workday have opted into using our AI solutions, but that's a conscious choice, and we have to provide them a lot of information to substantiate that work.
Great, thank you. And I have more questions, but I'm going to go around the horn first. So we're in the beginning stages of what I always think of as the great transition. And it's not just to clean energy, but it's our worlds are changing simultaneously. But as we're doing that, we're building the careers of the 21st century. Mr. Billingsley, in your testimony, you allude to how Tulsa, and I know Oklahoma City better than I know Tulsa just because there's a band there called the Flaming Lips that I'm listen to occasionally. But you allude to how Tulsa, specifically the community of Greenwood, was left out of the last technological revolution. What lessons can we learn to effectively incorporate AI literacy training into our workforce development in smaller rural communities, and particularly, from my point of view, small businesses?
Thank you, Chairman. I would actually speak about Greenwood kind of being a microcosm for marginalized communities across the country. We know communities of color and typically, underserved ones are often left out of these kinds of technological revolutions, which leads me to why I made my third point. I think it's critical for when it comes to making policy and advising in terms of how we're going to build the infrastructure to ensure AI is, something that everyone has access to. We have to over-index in the communities that have historically been left out, because we know that AI already has the potential to cause a lot of disruption. But if that's layered on top of a community that already didn't have some of the basic resources, whether it be from broadband or, computer literacy from a previous, technological jump, we could see, a worse effect. But that's not to speak of the negative aspects. That's to speak of the positive aspects. Think about some of the unleashed creativity potential that could happen if systems were developed specifically around ensuring that people in these communities were able to have on-ramps to be trained in them and also get jobs in the field. And when I say the field, I don't mean AI as its own vertical just specifically, but I also mean many of the high-growth industries that we know will last, for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. No, I get that the overlapping nature of some of our previous technological revolutions or disruptions did leave, they left whole communities behind, and now we run the risk of compounding those gaps. I'll turn it over now. We're out of time. I'll get back to you guys later, but for now I'll turn it over to Ranking Member Braun.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Newman, I was listening. My first question was going to be about how do we do this between the federal government and state and local governments. You cited that already some of the lower levels of government have gotten out there. I think you made it clear that you think we need some template here that will be the general framework. Is that, in a nutshell, what you said earlier?
It is, Ranking Member Braun. The companies that want to use this are being faced with a vexing and increasing patchwork of state and local laws, some of which are promulgated by folks who are less than informed on the technology, the upside risks, and the downside risks. This is creating a lot of headwinds for those who want to innovate, those who want to responsibly deploy, and those who want to make sure, as the fellow folks here testifying, want to make sure this is done responsibly. And I'm anti-regulation by DNA, but this is an area where I think the federal government ought to act responsibly and prudently and occupy the field so there is a uniform set of rules to do this responsibly that large and small companies alike can draw from and make sure they're on the right side of the compliance line while innovating.
You referenced something that's in the House currently. How long has that been there? Was it in the last Congress, or did it originate in this Congress?
So it made it to a discussion draft bill, not a formal numbered bill, and it was in the 2018 Congress. I think that was the 118th Congress.
You mean the last Congress?
Yes.
That was 117th.
117th, yes,
okay.
Sir.
So it made it to that point. Any other formality on legislation that you're aware of?
There's a bunch kicking around, but no.
I think Senator Hickenlooper and I will take a look at that. You talked about the downside risks. I'm going to call it the nefarious use of AI. Could you give me your top 3 biggest concerns, both domestically and internationally, in terms of what that might be in the time you've been looking at this?
In the employment context or general?
I'm talking more broadly here now.
Yes, I think AI could be used nefariously and will be by state actors to influence domestic issues. I think there will be a lot of fakes, voice and image. I think AI will be used to interfere with our elections and promulgate cyber attacks. Those are the most national security points of concern, in my view, X the workplace.
I'm glad you got it on record because we hear a lot about it, and a lot of times it's just referred to generally. Thank you. Ms. Morley Ryan, intrigued me, you work for Accenture, that you mentioned in workforce is such a big deal in a place like Indiana. We've got inherently low unemployment rates. We have half our counties that are trying to find their next act. That idea of getting better skills while you're in the place where everyone goes to school, K through 12. How do you see that? And I thought you mentioned that you're going to have entry-level positions in your own company that don't require a 4-year degree. Is that true? And would you elaborate on that?
Yes, thank you, Senator Braun. Yes, we have multiple ways to come into Accenture. To your point, half of our entry-level positions, or almost half of our entry-level positions, do not require a 4-year degree. Currently, yep. And we hire 20% of our entry-level positions through our apprentice program across North America. We have had 2,000 apprentices since 2016. We also do a bunch around apprentice networks across the country. We don't have one in Indiana yet, but Chicago was our founding apprentice network where we encourage other employers to join us in building apprentice work and learn programs. Additionally, from an access and on-ramp perspective, we work with nonprofits and other organizations to provide our perspective on technology and AI fluency to inform how they're developing their learning and training programs.
You mentioned, too, that you were going to increase. How many employees does Accenture have currently?
We have 733,000 employees globally.
Okay, and you mentioned going from 40 to 80,000.
Yes, sir.
Particularly aimed at an AI focus?
Yes, sir. Data and AI.
So you're going to bump it 5 to 10% of total employment on that. And again, a large percentage of those will be if you come out of high school with the right aptitude, you could come and apply for a job and get one.
Yes, assuming that there's openings and all that sort of thing. But yes, and I think
that's an amazing statistic from a company like Accenture that I would have just assumed it would have taken a 4-year degree. My daughter actually worked there for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Now in the company that I built, she and her 2 brothers are running it, but I think that's something we need to shout out more. Yeah. College educations are getting so expensive. The stat that I see is only 35% of the jobs actually require it. It's generally in technical or professional training. I think it is neat that you're doing that in a way that, to me, then emphasizes how important that K through 12 education is in teaching real life skills for a multitude of uses once you graduate from high school. I'll yield back.
Senator Casey.
Mr. Chairman, thanks very much. Before I start my questions, I wanted to ask unanimous consent that a statement be entered into the record. It's from Matthew Shearer, entitled "The Promise and the Peril of AI in the Workplace." It's dated today. I'd ask consent to make that part of the record.
Without objection.
Thanks very much. As Congress considers artificial intelligence and the future of work, it's critical that we focus on workers' voices and ensure that workers have a seat at the table when policies are made and decisions are made being made that impact workplaces excuse me, in such a significant way. As the power imbalance in workplaces continues to grow, employers are increasingly willing to use workplace technologies like AI, as well as invasive surveillance technologies that will allow them to track workers almost like pieces of equipment. Decisions are being made solely by employers without consultation or input from workers, and that's why I've introduced several bills aimed at creating a much-needed set of rules, standards, protections, and oversight to counter the risks of workplace technologies that are spreading unchecked. This July, I introduced the No Robot Bosses Act, it's Senate Bill 2419, which aims to regulate the potential risks and use of AI in the workplace. This bill would add protections for job applicants and employees related to automated decision systems and would require employers to disclose when and how these systems are being used. It would also create guardrails around how AI can manage workers. A second bill, by way of example, is the Stop Spying Bosses Act. This is Senate Bill 262 that I introduced in February to require disclosures and prohibitions for employers engaging in surveillance of workers. American workers are the backbone of our country, and they deserve to be treated with basic dignity at work. I'm hopeful that these bills and other actions that we take will help empower and protect workers, and I'll continue to fight for those protections and rights. Mr. Newman, I just have a question for you. Do you agree that the rise of AI has created both novel and unaddressed issues in the American workforce, and particularly with respect to both the autonomy of and the dignity of the American worker, and that it requires both study and appropriate rules of the road?
I agree with you 100%, Senator.
Thank you, and I hope we can work together on legislation and other policies that relate to workers. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. I'll give back all my time.
Great, thank you. Senator Budd.
Chairman, thank you, and I thank the panel for being here today. Mr. Lannon, whether businesses are aware of it or not, many of these existing services that they use, I mean, it's had AI integrated into it for years, whether they knew that or not. But as this technology further develops and the public has greater access to tools like generative AI, how can businesses of all sizes best leverage this technology?
Thank you, Senator. And it is true that there's been a breakthrough around the use of artificial intelligence in the last year and sort of a greater awareness among people from all walks of life about what it means. And that's pervasive from the employers and workers that we talk to. I think it's paramount that businesses are very transparent with their efforts in this area. It's one of the reasons that we believe not only in putting in place risk-based frameworks, but sharing what we're doing as an industry is so important. We hear more and more an interest from people who are both workers at companies and employers in understanding exactly how we're employing AI and for what ends. And when we provide that level of transparency, and the more we can do that in a standardized way, to Mr. Newman's point, I think we'll get more confidence and trust built around the use of AI. And I think fundamentally that's what this is about. It's something new, and it's going to take time for people to build trust and confidence in these systems. And if you're not transparent with the ways that you're leveraging AI, you're not going to be successful in sort of getting people comfortable and getting the most out of this technology.
Workday is a very well-known company, but it's most thought of as more of enterprise level. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest for small businesses to more quickly adopt some of the AI?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. You know, in my experience, it's taking an open mind towards experimentation while having an eye towards risk. There are a lot of great resources. There are emerging skill sets around AI that are coming up. And as we've talked about so far in the testimony, availing yourself about the online resources around prompt engineering, responsible use of large language models are all really valuable frameworks. Mm-hmm. Just within our organization, we do a lot of pretty informal training on like how best to use AI technologies to make decisions, and just driving a conversation around that technology in the workplace really elevates the discussion and allows us to sort of embrace the technology And we also sort of encourage like a skeptical attitude. So try things, try to break it, see if it really works in a practical sense, see if it has bias. And when you get comfort level with people using this technology, it's pretty amazing. And finally, I'll just say, like, watching my daughter go to school and come back using these tools in her classes, it's really interesting seeing in the last year professors switching to a mindset of like, we expect you to use these tools, just disclose that you're using them, explain how you're working with them. Don't just write the essay and pretend it's yours, like really use this in a meaningful way. And I think that principle holds for small businesses, large businesses as well.
That's helpful, thank you. So in the coming years, AI regulation will present a difficult challenge to both Congress and to federal agencies. Already, the European Union has proposed regulations that would classify AI technology according to a 4-tier risk-based system. And California's governor has directed state agencies to examine and report on so-called high-risk applications of AI, including those that would cause workforce displacement. So I think that the federal government should really tread carefully when considering new regulations in any form, and I appreciate your sentiment and your DNA, Mr. Newman. And I think that's particularly true in such a cutting-edge industry. But Mr. Newman, what impacts could these early attempts at regulation could they have on the very development of AI technology?
Well, I think we're seeing it in the state and local level and the patchwork of various approaches. It can be viewed as anti-innovative. It can raise the costs. It can fuel litigation. It can create barriers to responsible adoption. A lot of the developers are scratching their heads saying, what do I have to do in California? What do I have to do in New York City? Should we be in New York City if that's what we have to do? That's the opposite of what we want as a society. We want clarity, we want efficiency, we want fairness, we want rational regulation, and we're creating a hodgepodge of anti-competitive, anti-innovation, catch-or-catch-can all over the country, and that isn't desirable to fuel innovation.
Thank you all again for being here. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. All right, Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to our witnesses for being here. At least 3 of you, Mr. Billingsley, Mr. Lannon, and Ms. Morley-Ryan, your testimony is really focused on workforce issues. Mr. Newman, you really get into how to conceive of the regulatory challenge, not that you ignore the workforce issues, but I really want to focus on the workforce side, and maybe I'll use, Mr. Lannon, your written testimony. We believe a shift to a skills-based approach to talent is the best way forward. But by a skills-based approach to talent, we mean an emphasis on what a person can do or learn rather than solely on their credentials. I kind of read Mr. Billingsley's testimony about the need to over-index investment in education and training in communities representing people of color. Ms. Morley-Ryan, you talking about Accenture's apprenticeship programs and some of the things you're doing. Okay, how do we deal with the workforce, and how do we look at what it is to be educated and ready to succeed in an AI-dominant economy? We are woefully behind in a number of the policies we have at the federal level. Senator Braun and I are co-sponsors of a bill that has now been pending before the Senate for 9 years. The bill would do something really radical. It would allow Pell Grants to be used for career and technical training and not just college. It has virtually a zero cost. It has had about 60 members of the Senate currently serving as co-sponsors at one time or another. It's gotten close to being passed, but there always seems to be something in the way. Most recently, we had it on the list for a markup in committee, but there were 2 other bills being marked up that day that were controversial, and so the entire markup was pulled down. And what we expected was going to be essentially a voice unanimous vote from the committee never happened. It's not yet been scheduled for another markup. Meanwhile, all of my employers are telling me they're having a hard time hiring people. We just did a manufacturing bill, who's going to make it? We just did an infrastructure bill, who's going to build it? You've testified that significant percentages of your employees don't need college degrees. And yet we offer to families whose kids want to go to college or whose parents want their kids to go to college a significant financial entitlement and incentive they can count on in a Pell Grant. But for a family that wants to have a youngster in Tulsa, for example, master skills to be an AI professional decades forward that doesn't require a college degree, we don't necessarily provide easily accessible financial aid for that family or for that student. Just seems to me to be a no-brainer, And I agree with you, Mr. Lannon. We really are moving to sort of skills rather than credentials. Now, sometimes the best credentials are a validator of skills. So somebody who can pass the American Welding Society certification exam, they can take that anywhere in the country, and they may not know what the name of the high school you attended or what college you went to, but they know what an AWS certification is. So a credential can often be a validation of the skills or the validation of your ability to succeed in this area. But I just would like to throw it open to you. You know, we're the help committee. We set federal education policy, including how we incentivize students and their families to learn. I think we ought to incentivize college attendance, but I don't think we should suggest that college is the only way for somebody to successfully learn and be productive in this economy. And I would just love any of your comments on that.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Couldn't agree more. And I hope that with the looming transformation of AI, it could be used as impetus for taking action now at a congressional level. And I would just say, like Accenture, you know, we have had a lot of success with our Opportunity On-Ramp program at Workday, where 20% of our hires this year in early and mid-stage careers will come from a program that works with nonprofits to provide skill-based training for people at Workday, 4 to 6 month internships that are paid, transitioning to full-time hires at our company. People don't have to come from a background where they've had the opportunity to get a college degree, or maybe they're midlife and they are a veteran, or they're coming as a caregiver, and just having that skills-based orientation and mindset is so beneficial to us as an organization, and I do think we share that with my other panelists.
Absolutely. So I would draw a parallel between something that we're actually doing in Tulsa. We're trying to tackle a similar issue as it relates to, the cybersecurity industry, and we have some non-traditional programs like the Cyber Skills Center that offers a 6-month boot camp that we then use to connect people to apprenticeships within companies so that they can grow and be groomed and then get full-time employment. We should see something similar as it relates to the infrastructure around education and certification with artificial intelligence. But another thing we should consider is community-wide, use case training. One of the best ways for people to understand the power of artificial intelligence, specifically in different areas of the workforce, is for them to get hands-on experience seeing how effective it can be as a co-pilot for them. So one of the things that we've worked on designing in partnership with Seed AI, how do you go into a community and take some critical areas, workforce areas, and get the community to use, whether they be not just chatbots, but other forms of AI as co-pilots, whether it be in creative expression, grant writing, community development, social and criminal justice. We can provide real-world examples of how people can use AI to enhance, and improve their output in their career. That's a perfect way to get initial exposure before you plug them into an actual preset infrastructure.
Yes, and I echo again my fellow panelists here. I think what you're speaking to, Mr. Billingsley, is also just this overall technology and AI fluency that we need to be driving at the broadest level. And I think that starts at the K-12, sort of exposing people not only to the careers, which I think has been discussed quite a bit, but the technology in the context that it's a treat, to your point, Senator Hickenlooper, at the beginning, and not a trick, right? We want people to see what the value is for them within their own context, within their own sort of incentives and environment. And that comes back, I think, to what everybody has said so far today, which is centering the human or the person as a part of this conversation. So to your question on sort of workforce preparedness, Accenture is very much in line with you around providing opportunities, whether it's not a degree program or even a credential, but really driving technology and AI fluency in a variety of ways, which could be through work-based learning, it could be through a credential program or a 2 or 4 year degree, or it could candidly continue to just be on the job or within their K-12 education. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. I yield back.
That was a great question. They're all great questions, and I agree that making sure everything's human-centered is key. it is our prerogative to continue the questioning. So this, when you saw no other senators coming in, perhaps you breathed a sigh of relief, but you should hold that sigh. Ms. Morley-Ryan, and I think what we've seen with a lot of the questions and responses is that the balance between risk and opportunity that AI poses, and I feel that we have an alliance of people that are more excited by the opportunity. Not that we don't have to be aware of the risks, but that the opportunity is so exciting. Senator Braun talked a little bit about small businesses. Ms. Morley-Ryan, I want to make sure that small businesses see the excitement of opportunity here. Having ways to train workforce. Again, I was so impressed that almost half your entry-level work slots don't require college degrees. When I was governor of Colorado, we spent a couple years going through almost every job in the state government, and we found that almost half of them we could not justify the college degree that was being required. We got rid of it, but boy, was there a lot of pushback on that. And I think, I think that allowing small businesses to be able to see what you guys have clearly seen, that it's really about skills and the ability to acquire these skills. So how can we ensure that the AI education, this fluency you describe, and that the workforce development opportunities are tailored so that businesses of all sizes can get excited about it?
Thank you for the question. I think it starts again in this sort of K-12 exposure, because people are using this technology. I think one of the things that we've learned from small, medium, large-sized businesses that Accenture serves right now is that the youngest people are often having two computers up, right? The computer that's their work computer and the computer that they have their generative AI applications running on. So they're young people in general, I would say, are already using these applications. And for a small business, I think the presumption should be they're going to be bringing this knowledge, now whether it's, to my fellow panelists' point, informed around how this technology works or not. I think the importance for small businesses is that they're, to your point, driving fluency, but leveraging what's available, from what I would say trusted organizations in this space from a learning perspective. Accenture developed our responsible AI framework even before NIST's responsible AI framework. But there's organizations like NIST that I think small businesses can look to say, okay, what should our governance or our policy for our organization be? And it's not overburdensome because you have something that you can reference, right? I think the second piece is looking at what's publicly available, again, from a trusted organizations, and I would have to come back to you with a written statement around that, that they can use to drive fluency. There's tons of democratized learning in the world now, right? Learning is essentially free if you can go find the right places for it. So I think it's kind of twofold, right? Leveraging some of the existing frameworks and existing work that NIST and other organizations have done, but then also leveraging public learning in this space would be a start.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right about the democratization of learning and education. At various times, the CEOs of Walmart, Target, Starbucks have said, we'll share all of our IP in terms around training and skills acquisition if you could find a way to do that efficiently and fairly, and have a system where you had a lifetime of apprenticeship opportunities. Kids of all ages could get stackable credentials that would reflect their skills acquisitions, and sort through that. And I think AI really helps us get there. I actually, as an individual, I own the rights to the domain name myshot.com, which I bought about 7 years ago, right when Hamilton had just come out. And I don't think Lin-Manuel Miranda is going to actually ever let me use the song, but I did think that image of a country looking at this as myshot.com, people of all ages seeing that as something that you guys are working on. Let me say, Mr. Newman, we look and we see the research that AI technologies can create all these positive opportunities, jobs across, and that AI will impact each workplace differently, so it'll be important to make sure that workers can access the trainings that meet a variety of skills and skill requirements. As this all happens so fast, these transitions are going so quickly, the potential that I think you lay out there that AI can be a tool to take intellectual property and violate the cost and the creation of that capital. What do you imagine as some of the solutions that would protect companies in that situation?
Yeah, well, coming from Silicon Valley, I think we place a premium on IP protection, and I think AI is a tool in the threat actor's arsenal to try through cyber or other means to implicate and compromise intellectual property, which is the bedrock of our nation's innovation. So I think that there does need to be a hard look at the IP protections afforded around AI. I think on the domestic side and non-national security side, there's now a large debate in the courts about whether copyright holders should be given compensation if their copyrighted work is used in a data training set for an algorithm. I think that cries out for an ASCAP type model where there's a marking of copyrighted works and some statutory compensation to copyright holders. I mean, we're going a field of employment, but that is an AI-generated issue with intellectual property. And this really gets me to the point where, again, DNA-wise, I'm against regulation, but what worries me is state and local regulators who don't have the time and resources to delve into this area and understand the technology, understand the legal issues, understand the worker versus management. All of these considerations are important, and that's why I think AI cries out for a federal uniform solution in most, if not all, domains, national security and civil side as well, because it's the federal government that is uniquely positioned with its resources and the folks who are serving in the federal government to take the time to understand the issues we're just exploring today. And I think we're going to have a better bipartisan resolution that meets all of the varying constituents' legitimate needs if the federal government acts versus this state and local patchwork we're getting in every aspect of AI. I think it's detrimental to both sides of the debate.
Great. Thank you. Senator Braun.
Mr. Lannon, Workday's only been a company for 18 years, it looks like. Started in 2005. Financial planning, HR, a lot of companies started then. When did you start incorporating AI into what you do as a company and the consulting you give to others?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, it's been an amazing 18-year ride for the company. And, you know, I think it was interesting for us because we were one of the first companies to move to the cloud. And at the time, that was very new for the type of work that we were doing. And there were a lot of incumbent questions upon us from customers about, is the data secure? Can it be trusted? And so some of those bedrock principles that we founded at the start of the company hold very much true as we've started to make forays into AI over the last number of few years, especially in 2019. We had
So on the timeline, the cloud, I think we all understand now. When did you actually formalize the use of AI into your own company and what you advise to others?
Yeah, I want to follow up with making sure it doesn't predate the data I'm going to give you, but 2018, 2019 was a time when we started developing machine learning-based algorithms to deliver capabilities. That's also when we started working on what would become a lot of the NIST-based AI risk management frameworks to go along with that work. And so
And you're on the leading edge of it, so that's 3 to 4, maybe 5 years, and the distance we've traveled, that's amazing. So, begs the question, since you're on the leading edge of it, and we generally will always hear about what good comes from it, are there any examples of where, even in your own company or with businesses that have incorporated it, have gotten ahead of their skis and had issues with it?
None of significance, but I think we are so leaning into a prevailing concern with our experience that we could introduce risk, especially in terms of bias and discrimination into the workplace. And so, and I think that's most pronounced for us as we start to evaluate some of these generative AI technologies. One of the things that a lot of our first generation AI was good at was like predicting financial numbers, doing math. Does your payroll add up?
The low-hanging fruit.
The low-hanging fruit. And now we're talking about AI systems that can write business documents, evaluate contracts, really do a lot.
So fair to say we're on the cusp of all the potential that might be good ahead of us, but a lot of the potential issues, which would beg the kind of a general regulatory framework, are just coming to the surface.
I think that is true, and I agree that, you know, we're a company that's very accustomed to working in regulated environments with a lot of different compliance regimes, cybersecurity, FedRAMP, many of these things. We're comfortable with that, but what it really hurts when you have a mishmash of different approaches, and having something uniform at a national level and allowing the U.S. to take leadership in this area is really important. A lot of our businesses operate at a global level, and so the more we can have a simplified, smart set of regulations, the more benefit we'll have, and I think, you know, those benefits will accrue to all nature of businesses.
Mr. Billingsley, when you take what we just talked about there, and then you relate it to entrepreneurs wanting to capitalize on it, we've seen cryptocurrency being something a little bit amorphous recently in terms of the volatility of it, number one. What is your concern about everything we've discussed here in terms of entrepreneurs who generally are a little less risk averse plowing into a field where they'd want to build a company when there are so many inherent uncertainties around it?
Thank you for the question. I actually think this is why the conversation around workforce is critical. Because when we talk about how you're going to use AI, if it's going to be the bedrock of the new economy, that's both in terms of workforce and entrepreneurship. In a lot of ways, some of the best entrepreneurs are people who spent a long time in the field, learning a specific skill, and then they branch out and start their own company. So when you talk about risk-averse entrepreneurs, yes, some will jump up and start companies without any background, but if we create the correct framework for people to learn and be trained with AI in the workforce, we're actually training up some more responsible people who have more fluent skills in terms of AI. So when they start perhaps AI-enabled businesses and companies, they can use them more responsibly, they can use them more effectively, because they'll have the reference point of what they learned and how they saw it administrated when they were in the workforce.
I look back to the dot-com craze as an analog based upon just technology in general, and look at the number of companies that flamed out in a short period of time back then, and look now how important that has been in terms of woven into almost every aspect. So I think that was a lot less concerning then, but when you do get a hot new technology, entrepreneurs generally not being risk averse, this to me almost looks like it's more full of potential pitfalls than what we would have had back 2 decades ago.
Absolutely. I think that's the inherent nature of how AI should be approached. When you've got a tool, I always use the analogy, 2 kids, hitting each other with pillows is one thing, but if they ended up having an actual weapon, the amount of times you have to get it wrong is 1. So when we think about specifically high growth companies who are going to integrate AI and end up using it for solutions that are critical for, whether it be loan applications and critical decisions, you don't have very many times to get it right before it becomes a serious problem. So, the reference and initial framework is more critical than it's ever been.
Thank you.
Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And now, Mr. Newman, I'm going to get to you since I dealt with my other 3 witnesses in the first round. First, I was intrigued with one aspect of your testimony that was cryptic and unexplained. I think I know what you mean, but I wanted to ask you about it. I'm not part of any lobbying special interest or industry group. I'm here as a concerned citizen and father. Why'd you throw father into your testimony?
I have 5 children, and the world they're coming into is going to be impacted from a 24-hour cycle, asleep, awake, all the way back to asleep by AI. And I'm concerned. I know firsthand the tremendous upside AI offers in every use case, including the workforce. And again, by DNA, I'm anti-regulation. But AI, from what I've seen behind the scenes, from those developing it and innovating it, they mean well, they're doing the best they can, but this is an area for the health, welfare, and safety of society. I believe the federal government ought to provide rules of the road.
And it sounds like from listening to your testimony, reading it, but also listening to in the Q&A, that your belief in federal regulation sort of is justified by 2 pillars. One is there would be danger of differing state-level regulatory schemes that could choke off innovation, that could create huge problems for the development of this industry, that could put us at a strategic disadvantage with other nations. So the one justification for a federal framework is to avoid needless complexity and contradictory state-level regulation. But then the second level is sort of on the more affirmative side. You think that there are aspects where we could advance good and put up guardrails against bad by doing the federal level regulation. And one item in the 3rd page of your testimony where you go over the sort of your 5 points about the different sections intrigued me. Section 202 creates a federal worker realignment program to aid covered individuals displaced by AI by training such individuals for alternative careers and by helping such individuals find employment opportunities. We have an analog to that in trade adjustment assistance. So for a long while, we have had federal programs to focus resources on individuals and communities if trade has disrupted something that they've counted on as a pillar of the economy. Until I read your testimony, I had not heard someone suggest the same thing from those displaced by AI or other technological advancements. My experience as a mayor and governor before I got here is that more people lose jobs to technology changes than to trade. But with trade, there's somebody you can blame. You can blame the person who negotiated the trade deal. A job has gone overseas. There might be a plant with a lock on it. It's easy to blame, whereas we don't really want to blame technology because we all like carrying around the latest version of these. And so we tend not to focus so much upon the dislocations in the workforce caused by technology. But I thought that was an interesting proposal, and thinking about it kind of connected to trade adjustment assistance, I found it to be a creative one. You want to expand on that?
Yes, I have had this debate with many of folk, is AI the cotton gin, and are we Luddites, and will there be more jobs created? And yes, there'll be some jobs created, but let me take my profession as an example, and maybe it's a good thing, but there are going to be less lawyers, okay? There's tremendous private equity and venture capital being deployed to create AI solutions in the law. And they're going to be amazingly effective in doing things better than the human can do in the law. Now, with our rule of law system, we always need humans. And there's going to be, in my view, you don't want AI judges, AI juries. But in the day-to-day practice of law, there are going to be less lawyers, less paralegals, less admins. And there isn't going to be a re-entry into the workforce for a lot of these folks with their skill set. So I do come out on the side that AI is fundamentally different than all that's come before, and the impact on the workforce will be different, and there will ultimately, in my view, be dislocation on a different level than we've seen before. And I do think one aspect, if the federal government is eventually going to legislate this, is not only providing for something like a chief AI officer and the necessity for one, and having an AI board like we have the SEC, the FDA, et cetera, or the NLRB or the EEOC, but I think we're going to need a worker retraining program that's federally funded that allows workers of various skill sets to have a way to re-enter the workforce in some way if they're displaced by AI.
Let the record show Mr. Billingsley was emphatically nodding his head yes on that last point. So I think that's an important thing for us to hear. I appreciate it.
Great question, and appreciate the answer. I've got quick questions. I know that I'm standing between you and freedom, and perhaps your lunch. Let me see the first question I want. Ms. Morley-Ryan, your recent, or Accenture's recent Life Trends report states that technology today feels like it's happening to people, not for them. What does your research indicate about the skills that workers are seeking out to help them understand and leverage AI, and how can adequate skills training help workers to regain and restore their sense of trust in the workplace? And then, Mr. Billingsley, I'm going to ask you to comment on this as well.
Yeah, I think the question, thank you for that question, Senator. I think the question has sort of my answer will have two parts. One is we focus a lot on the hard skills, sort of what is AI, what does this technology do, how can I use it? What Accenture's found through our extensive work with our own people and the $1 billion a year that we invest in our own learning, as well as our client conversations and engagement in the community, is that it's just as important to have what I would call sort of the support to build a culture of learning, right? Growth mindset, self-efficacy, agency for that learner, to have choice as to say what job is going to be their next job, and giving them an opportunity to make that choice. So I think there's a component of sort of the hard skills piece, if that makes sense from an availability, but then also recognizing what we know about human behavior, cognitive science, and neuroscience about how people learn, so that we provide opportunities that and training programs and learning programs that allow and are based in that knowledge. Yeah.
Good.
That's it.
Mr. Billingsley?
Absolutely, I would echo those sentiments. You know, in my community, we have a saying called, "What you do for me, without me, you do to me." And I think that's often the entire approach of, you know, these technological revolutions, or to be frank, even sometimes when regulation is handed down. I think that this new age of AI that we're in is also an opportunity for us to take a far more community-focused approach when it comes to not only figuring out what are the right decisions to make, but how are things actually going to affect people in real time. Engaging workers, engaging community members, and exposing them to this technology, to go back to that point, exposing them to this technology in two different tracks, one that is more framed in terms of how they might apply it in workforce, but another that's more general that helps people specifically in you know, communities of color, many of whom have a really terrifying view of AI, that gets them to develop a culture that they're more comfortable with it, they can adopt it, but also they can see using it as a remedy to so many of the stumbling blocks that they've often faced, both in the workforce or in everyday life. The culture and the social systems we build around AI are equally as important as the technology. For most people, it's more important because most people aren't on the fringes to be able to influence how the technology actually works fundamentally. But for most of us, it's these systems we develop. So that's where most of the energy needs to go, and it needs to be human and people-focused.
Right, got that. And then on that same similar slant, Mr. Newman, I thought, I mean, we all have a vested interest in protecting the rights of workers, especially their civil rights. And you were talking about this universal opportunity for retraining workers, which I think really makes a lot of sense. All of you have said a version of that along here. Mr. Newman, in your experience, what are some of the factors that should weigh, that employers should be thinking about when considering AI implementation to really help make sure the workers are included and at the same time protected, but really included while just, I think, sort of what Mr. Billingsley was saying.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chairman. The framework that all companies should aspire to who deploy AI, whether large or small, is to have either by name or the equivalent a chief AI officer. And one of their responsibilities will be to educate and disclose transparently to the workforce what AI systems are being used in the workplace that can affect your hire, your fire, your promotion, your identification for promotion, job selection, et cetera. And by being transparent in that way as one facet of the chief AI officer's job, it takes a lot of the fear and uncertainty away, and the workforce can see that they're not being treated unfairly by AI because they understand what's happening. It's the black box approach. It's the we are using it in ways we're not showing you to spy and harm you versus very responsible ways to use AI in the employment context that ought to be disclosed, and workers should understand what's happening.
Right. No, excellent points made. My last question for Mr. Lannon, although you could all, I mean, every one of you could have answered every one of these questions. It's such a great panel. There are a number of ways that AI obviously can enhance workplace processes. You've all described this. You promote efficiencies, make workers more productive, make their lives easier in many cases. This could go too far, and we run the risk of relying too much on AI, I think potentially at the expense of human decision-making. Imagine decision-making being a muscle that atrophies. So Mr. Lanning, how are developers thinking about the need to balance advances in AI without losing sight of the critical analytic decision-making capability?
When we think about developing AI into our products, we need to think about what outcomes we're going to achieve as part of that process. Is it going to have an impact on the hiring we're doing? Is it going to have an impact on another part of the workforce? If we understand the outcomes, then we can understand where human judgment comes to play most. And we can think about AI as that co-pilot that allows someone to be more informed in their judgment. And so I think it starts with really assessing, like, what are the key parts of any piece of work that matter the most, where we rely on that fundamental ability to make good decisions, and we can augment them as sort of a foundation point. Yes, AI will show up in lots of simple, nondescript ways across the products. It'll recommend a song. That's pretty innocuous, but there are many places in the work that we do where human decision-making matters. It was a great point around the legal profession. For sure, we want our judges and our jurors to be human beings that are applying their judgment. And so I think that analogy holds for all kinds of different professions. And that's how I think about it, is what's the outcome we're driving? And if you think holistically about that, it's easy to arrive at the places we need to keep people at the center.
Great. And that's, I think, where you started, was keeping people at the center. More questions?
I'm good.
All right. I think, not that I'm out of questions, but I think that I will back off at the moment. But I can't thank you all enough for taking the time to be here. I think this has been so illuminating in so many ways, and I feel so optimistic. Not that there aren't serious risks that you guys have all laid out, but that it's, and I am an optimist. Entrepreneurs, you can't be in small business. These days, you can't be in government if you're not somewhat of an optimist. And I think I come away from this feeling that more hopeful than fearful. Anyway, that will end our hearing today. I'd like to thank the colleagues who are here and watching on the Zoom and the internet. I want to thank each of our witnesses, Mr. Billingsley, Mr. Lannon, Ms. Mobley-Ryan, Ms. Newman, Morley-Ryan, sorry, Mobley. Morley-Ryan and Mr. Newman. Again, words can't express how much I appreciate having such a wide arc of experience to help us work through this stuff. For any senators that wish to ask additional questions or have questions that weren't asked today, questions for the record will be due within 10 business days, so on Tuesday, November 15th at 5 p.m. So ordered. The committee now stands adjourned.